Welcome to Conversations with Writers. I'm Andy. I'm a writer, and this is an educational YouTube series meant to catalog writing strategies and philosophies through conversations with other writers. Marissa Massey started her writing career as a poet, and after years of studying literature at Eastern Kentucky University, she found her true passion, memoir. Her nonfiction essays won her the EKU English Department Creative Writing Award for Nonfiction in 2018. After earning her Master's of Writing and Publishing at Emerson College in Boston, Marissa worked her way to the head of content and SEO at a local marketing and web design company. In her free time, she's working on her nonfiction collection of essays titled Her, A Million Little Paradoxes. She also loves riding motorcycles with her husband and playing with their son. And this is my conversation with Marissa. Hi, how are you?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
I understand.
So what are you working on now, and what motivated the project?
So my passion project for the past couple of years has been my nonfiction collection of essays titled Her, A Million Little Paradoxes. It has been a long time that I've been writing it. A little embarrassed to say, but I do truly believe it needs time. Sometimes you don't process things until, several years later. And I feel like this is the kind of project that's just going to take years, and I think that's okay. And this one is really, the crux of the paradox, really, to go with the title, is this intersection of belief and identity. So living as a proudly bisexual woman, but also growing up in a Christian home, big Christian home, growing up with certain beliefs that definitely go against, my beliefs of, being who I am is beautiful and being exactly who I'm supposed to be. So it's these ideas clashing, and the experiences of my life of, having to live with these truths that coexist, that oppose each other, but in me, they're going to coexist. So it's kind of like this drama a little bit. It's a collection of essays, like I said, memoir style. So each essay stands alone, but also works together as like a greater symphony. So that has kind of been my passion project. It kind of started as a way to work through trauma. So, as with many writers, that's kind of where it started, but it's really turned into this beautiful love letter to myself and just of acceptance. So that's why I said, writing it over years, I think is the best way to do it, just because time is often the best teacher. So that's my big project that I've been working on. But I have a couple of small ones that not necessarily small, but just very different. I have one that is more in the beginning stages. It's kind of about everything they don't tell you about pregnancy, all the things they don't tell you about motherhood, because it's one big secret that nobody tells you. And then you go through it and you're like, why didn't you tell me? So it's kind of unraveling those, not just for myself to be like, hey, what the heck? But to hopefully help others in the process, new moms who deserve to know things. And so yeah, that's kind of a start of a project. I'm not sure where it's gonna go, but yeah, those are my two big projects right now.
Awesome. I cannot wait to read those. What's one thing that you wish you had known that they hadn't told you in terms of being a new mom?
Oh my goodness. So many things. So many things. Preparing for birth is very much not just a physical thing, it's a mental battle. And it takes time to prep for it. I think, we talk about getting your body ready and doing exercises, but really I think the biggest battle through labor is it's not your body. Your body knows what to do. It's prepping your mind for such a long battle. For instance, I was in labor for 48 hours. So I was in labor for a long time with my son. And I think the biggest struggle was myself, keeping my mental faculties like, okay, I'm here, I'm present, thinking through breathing. Like you have to think about breathing to calm your body. So that's not a fun tidbit. It's just like a real tidbit of like, you got to prepare for the mental battle as well as the physical.
40 hours?
48. Yeah, I was in labor a while. Yeah.
For 48 hours. 48 hours you were in labor. How do you stay awake to give birth for 48 hours?
Thankfully, there are intermittent periods of like rest, like between contractions, and you can sleep, at least in the early stages. And then, of course, if you do decide to get an epidural, that helps for sure. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. Your body just like is a powerhouse. It knows what to do. It truly is incredible.
So what have you got going on with SEO? That's something that you work on too.
Yeah, typically my SEO projects are just more tied to my work. I'm not doing any like personal SEO projects. My projects are more for our very large clients. We have clients that have, 60 locations, or they might have like, 50 dealers that they're working with. And my job is to make sure that I'm not just helping the content needs of individual locations, I'm making sure the company as a whole is taken care of. So a lot of that has to do with branding too. It's not just SEO. Of course, we want to help our clients rank in the search engine. That's, number one. If they're not getting leads, then, we're not doing our job. But a huge part of that is storytelling. And it's really about finding that individual brand voice of like, what sets this company apart from all the rest, why you should go to this business instead of all the others. So, it is business, it is about SEO, it is about getting leads. But at the end of the day, it's storytelling. How does this brand distinguish against another?
So what have you learned about yourself through writing?
That I am much harder on myself than anybody else ever could be. um, you know, I think writing has been my greatest tool for working through my thoughts and feelings. And I think that's true of most writers, right? We're working through, things in our lives, tough decisions, relationships. And I think the biggest thing for me has just been time as your ally. Even though you might be feeling something very strongly in the moment, and it's good to get those things out on paper or on the laptop as we do these days. But I'm a fan of coming back, as we'll probably talk about a little bit more. I am definitely a fan of let's come back to this when I am not so angry or hurt or sad, so that I can actually talk through this in a way that if someone were reading this, it would be helpful for them.
How does your creative writing experience inform your approach to SEO and writing for marketing purposes?
I think that no matter what you're writing for, whether you're writing an essay, whether you're writing a book, or you're trying to get clients to rank in a search engine, if you're, writing blogs, no matter what you're doing, it's about purpose. It's like about knowing your purpose, and it's about knowing your audience. And if you can understand those two principles, you can write about anything. So for instance, my book or my memoir collection of essays, whatever we want to call that. I think that's for young women. I think it's for queer people. I think it's for people who have experienced religious trauma. So I understand who my audience is. I understand my purpose of it's not just for me. It's not just for me to work through. It's to help others too. And it's the same thing if you're writing for SEO purposes, if you're writing to help a client rank in the search engine. I understand that my purpose is to help clients rank. My purpose is to help clients get readership, but I also understand my audience, So if I'm writing for a window treatment dealer, that voice and those needs are going to be very different than if I'm writing for a fashion designer in New York, right? Very different things. But the same idea, it all comes back to those same ideas. If I understand purpose and I understand audience, I can write about anything. So really, my studies of literature, my personal writing, it all goes hand in hand, right? It's the same skills that I'm exercising, just for a different purpose, different audience.
I completely agree. I think knowing your audience, knowing your purpose, that's really important to write anything, regardless of what you're writing. It's important to have a good sense and understanding of these concepts to do it successfully, right? And for something like marketing purposes, you also have to think about that attention span. So doing it in less words is really important too.
Absolutely. You're definitely correct. I mean, our attention spans are, if you've not captured me in 10 seconds, I'm moving on.
What's the role or responsibility of writing for you? What keeps you generating material? Why write?
I love this question, and I don't know how you'll feel about my answer. I personally, the writer has no responsibility to anyone but themselves. I think we look at, famous writers and are like, they owed it to us to create this incredible story, but truly no. This was their story. This lived inside of them before they got it out onto paper and you read it. And it was just a miracle that they shared it with you. I don't believe that, it's also from my own experience of, I am a writer, and whether I share my writing with somebody else, I'm still a writer, whether I've published, whether I've shared it with another human. So truly the responsibility is just to ourselves. For me, writing, what keeps me generating material is more about, I love Michelle Obama's title of her book, Becoming. And I think that's what it's been for me, of writing through what I've been through to discover who I am, to work through, events or people or relationships or what have you. For me, it's truly about becoming who I'm supposed to be, understanding where I've been so I can know where to go.
I think that's a lovely answer. And I think you're right that we do have a responsibility to ourselves first and foremost, right?
Right.
When you're struggling to write for whatever reason, what do you do to help get yourself back to the page?
That's easy. Time. Time I have discovered is my friend. Whether it's I'm taking a walk and gonna come back, or if it's a week or a year or whatever time I need to process, think through, just because I do value the brain work before. It's just as important as sitting down to write, the emotional work, the brain work of thinking through. So I'm a huge fan of taking time, however much I need. I tend to write in spurts of where I'm like consumed by writing and I need to get it all out. And it could be like a month or 2 or 6 where I'm just like writing ferociously. And then I'll take like a year off because I've gotten it all out. And now I'm like, okay, I can't touch this yet. I can't revise this yet. I need time to sit with it. So I even when I'm struggling, like sometimes I need to do the brain work first, or maybe I don't have enough perspective on an event yet, or I need to talk to somebody else who was involved in said event first. So when I'm struggling, when I have writer's block, it's about time and letting myself be ready to continue writing. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's a wonderful answer. What about when you have a deadline looming? So when you're writing for marketing purposes, and you're struggling to write, do you have any strategies to help get you over that hump?
There are two. My boss would probably not like the first one, but I'm a firm believer that procrastination and pressure really get you to crank out stuff. So that's my, answer that I won't share with my boss. But for me, especially for deadlines, scheduling the time to write, that way I know what's coming. I know what I need to mentally prepare to do. I've specially set aside this time to do this specific task, and I'm not leaving until it's done. This 2 hour block is when I'm doing it, and I don't want to keep doing it afterwards. So we're going to crank it out. So I think it's a combination of a little bit of pressure, and then scheduling. I think that's definitely a good thing for professional projects and personal ones too.
What revision strategy or strategies do you find most useful when revising your own work and why? What sort of problems or challenges do these activities help you solve?
Well, revision is a little hard for me, just because the way I typically write is it's kind of like an album, right? For essays. It's the whole album, all of these essays go together, but each individual song, each individual essay needs to stand on its own. The best way I have found to do that is take it a piece at a time, an essay at a time, a section at a time. And for me, typically, I'm not revising. And this is just what I found works for me is I'm not revising anything beyond grammar and spelling until I've gotten the essay out. I've got to let it all come out, and then my line editing, of course. And I have to take it in chunks. I need to see it as an individual. I need to see each paragraph as an individual, each section, each essay as an individual, and then compare it to the whole because I need it all to be cohesive. So I don't know if there are specific strategies, but I know for me, I need to take it a piece at a time, get it all out, and then a section at a time. And if that section can work, then I'm ready to move on. And at the end, I'm able to look at it as a whole. Is all this working? Do I need to move this here? Do I need to move that there? By that point, I'll have really good paragraphs that it's not going to be problematic for me to move around, right? I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does. I think that's a great answer. Take it bit by bit. So one tree at a time instead of the whole forest.
Whew, yes. That would be it would definitely be hard to take the whole thing at a time. I mean, yeah, it's piece by piece.
So what is your favorite part of the writing process and why?
I love the brain work. I love whether it's fiction, that's the fun part. When it's fiction, a lot of the brain work is fun because you're imagining, right? But I think the brain work is probably the most fun of, hey, these are the things I want to include, but how am I going to put them all together? How do I want this to end? When I'm taking breaks and going on a walk, figuring out why didn't this work together? Why didn't this piece fit? What do I still need to figure out? So asking myself questions during, whether it's before I'm writing, whether it's I'm taking a break. I think that brain work is probably the most fun for me. I also love revision. I love that the process is finally out because sometimes, the writing of it can be hard, letting it come out. But once it's out, seeing these pieces and you're like, wow, I wrote that really creative phrase. So proud of you, So I think revision is also another fun part of the puzzle.
What reading suggestions do you have? What authors do you keep in your back pocket?
Well, I am a product of my generation and definitely love some fairy smut. I will admit that. Because you can't live in like Emily Bronte all the time. You cannot live in Edith Wharton 24/7. So you definitely need some reading breaks. And fairy smut is a good break. So that's a good palate cleanser. But if I'm working through some heavy emotional stuff, I think Wuthering Heights is kind of my go-to. The emotional crux of Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff and Catherine are it's something just that aches my heart as just a human. It's such a beautifully written book, even though it's heartbreaking, right? Going to stories that are emotional. I know that sounds strange, but going to stories that I connect with when I'm struggling or I'm wanting to write about something that gives me this feeling, let me go to a book that's gonna give me that feeling to help me get it out or give you ideas or whatever it might be. So definitely Emily Bronte is a go-to. Like I said, I do like Edith Wharton. Toni Morrison, come on. Everyone loves Toni Morrison. But like I said, you need both. You need those classic writers, but then you need those palate cleansers, right?
Thank you for those wonderful reading suggestions, and thank you for making time to hang out with me. I really appreciate it, and I've learned so much.
No, I appreciate the invitation. I'm honored. So thank you for inviting me. I love what you're doing. I appreciate you being in conversation with writers. Community is so huge, as you know, like with being a writer, you need other writers to survive, you know.